Western Massachusetts. Okay. My team of volunteers provides one-to-one ESL instruction for newcomers in the community, and when the time comes, they help them become citizens. And we specialize in helping students who are at risk of failing, so older students, students who have limited education, students with very low proficiency or text anxiety, and we have 100% pass rate here. When this program started, it was back in the 80s, actually, and we had a group of Cambodian refugees who had just been resettled here in Amherst, and they had very little formal education, very low English proficiency, and they wanted to get their relatives out of really dangerous places. And the only way to do that was to become a citizen and file for green cards for their family members. And they couldn't become citizens because they couldn't pass the test. So I started developing materials for really low level students, including low reading levels. And those materials became the Passing the Test series that I'm going to tell you about today. But first, I want to give you a quick overview of the test for people who might not be familiar with it. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Right. So there are three parts to the citizenship test: civics, literacy, and speaking. And the part that most people are familiar with is the civics part of the test. It involves 100 questions and answers that students study. And at their interview, they'll be asked 10 of them, and they have to get 6 right to pass. And it's an oral test, so students don't need to practice reading every word of the questions and answers. They only need to understand spoken questions and produce spoken answers. And you can see an example of one of those questions and answers up on the screen. So for the literacy test, students are asked to read one simple sentence and to write one simple sentence. And there are about 36 possible sentences that students can practice for the test. Immigration only gives out a list of vocabulary words, but the actual sentences that the student might be asked to read or write are in my book, so you can get them there. Here's an example. So the applicant will be given an iPad, and the examiner will say, please read what's on the screen. And if the student reads what president is on the dollar bill, the student passes that writing test. The student doesn't have to know the answer to this question, though, because did I say the writing test? That was the reading test. For the writing test, the examiner is going to dictate the answer. So the examiner will give a stylus to the student and say, Washington is on the dollar bill, and the student would have to write that sentence. They can ask for repetition as many times as they want. They can make some mistakes on this. It doesn't have to have perfect punctuation. If they leave out a small word like the, they can still pass. If they spell dollar wrong, as long as somebody could read that word and it looks like dollar, they still pass, and they get 3 chances at this. So it's a pretty easy test, and my students don't fail it. English speaking ability is assessed as the examiner goes through the N400 citizenship application with the student, and this is where they have the most trouble. It's hard to predict exactly how the examiner is going to ask the question, what wording the examiner is going to use. And so it's the trickiest one to prepare for. Students really just don't prepare for it because they don't know what to do. And so this is what they fail on most often. So let me introduce you to the Passing the Test series. There's 4 pieces to it. The civics and literacy book is the white book you see in the front there. The blue book is the literacy workbook. The red book is ready for the interview. And there's one teacher's guide for all 3 of those. The cornerstone of the series is the white book, the Civics and Literacy book. This book makes it possible to work on citizenship with students at really low proficiency levels. So it's good for beginners. There's really simple explanations of everything. There's visuals on every page to support comprehension. So if the students are not good readers, they can still talk about what's in the picture and they'll get the idea. Lots of reinforcement exercises on each page and also at the end of each chapter. And the book covers everything that students need to know for two parts of the test, the civics part and the literacy part. And by the way, there's audio for this book. It's available on the New Readers Press website and it's free. The first chapter goes over really easy questions that sometimes the students already know the answers to. You know, for example, the 50 states or the Washington, D.C. as the capital, the national anthem, the president, and it's meant to be a confidence booster. It gets students used to the format of the book. So you're looking at a sample page and you can see the actual test question that it's explaining at the bottom, that shaded in area. Why does the flag have 50 stars? You will also see a vocabulary feature there. What does it mean? And this just explains new words in a really simple way. There's a pronunciation feature on this page, say it. This draws students' attention to words that they need to say as they produce an answer to the test. So they actually have to be able to pronounce these words. And here's a sample page from later in the book. Again, you'll see that the civics test question that it's explaining is at the bottom. And if you look on the right side of the screen, you'll see another example of the literacy test. So a student might be asked to read aloud, when is Labor Day? And then the examiner would dictate Labor Day is in September. So a lot of the literacy items follow that pattern. They're about what month a particular holiday is in. And so a lot of the pages in passing the test have this box that you see in the middle that features a particular holiday. If you look down below, you'll see the vocabulary feature. What does it mean? That explains the word labor. The spelling feature gives you two words in the dictation sentence that might be tricky for students to write. So they're starting to practice the spelling there. And then the say it feature below that gives you a phrase that might be hard for students to say, Secretary of Labor. So it gives, it puts the attention on that phrase. The teacher can practice it with the students and they can make sure that they're ready to read that question out loud. So the newest edition features a broader representation, range of representation in the graphics. So, for example, Black Americans are portrayed as citizens and government leaders and voters instead of just as enslaved people. One question on the citizenship test asked students to name 2 national holidays. And in the previous editions, we taught Columbus Day and Thanksgiving. The new edition teaches Juneteenth and President's Day. And that's what you see on the screen. At the end of each chapter, there are several pages of review exercises to help students practice vocabulary, literacy test items, and rehearse the civics questions. And at the end of each chapter, there's a feature called the test hint. And this coaches students on a particular test taking strategy or coaches them on what to do if they have trouble with something during the interview. So in this example, the students are learning how to buy a little bit of time to think of the answer by saying, let's see, or let me think. And as I mentioned earlier, immigration doesn't tell students much about the literacy test. They just give out this list of vocabulary words to study. Passing the test has the actual sentences that students will need to read aloud and to write as dictations. So for some people, this might be worth the cost of the book alone. Now I'm going to move to the literacy workbook. That's the blue book. This book isn't necessarily for typical adult learners. It's a supplement that's intended for the very lowest level readers, pre-literate students. It only teaches the reading and writing skills that applicants need for the literacy test. It doesn't go into the civics material or the speaking test. It starts by teaching the alphabet, simple sight word recognition, and scaffolded dictation exercises, and gradually it leads students to read and write full sentences, the actual sentences they'll see on the test. So here's a sample page, and students would work on sight recognition here, pronunciation, phonemic awareness. And I want to draw your attention to the shaded area at the bottom. I don't think you can make out exactly what it says, but this tells instructors how to lead the exercise on the page. The literacy test requires students to read a sentence aloud and write a dictated sentence. And students have to hear these words and sentences in order to learn them. So instructors can't be effective unless the teacher reads the exercises with students or plays the audio track. If you don't want to read the dictation exercises to students, then you can get the audio tracks free on the New Readers Press website. So you would go to the sales page for this particular book, and you'll find it under free resources. If you look for the red arrow at the bottom of the page, that's where the audio is. The two books that I've just introduced, the white civics and literacy book and the blue literacy workbook, are all you need to help students with two parts of the test, but there's a third part. And I'm going to ask you to type into the chat, what's that third part? Can you remember? No? Nothing. It's the English speaking test. It's where applicants are asked questions about their application. And speaking proficiency is supposed to be determined through those questions.
There was a few that got it.
You got it. So students can study those 100 civics questions on their own, but it's almost impossible for them to prepare for the personal background interview independently. And that's what makes Ready for the Interview so valuable, the Red Book. It prepares students for their interview. It also shows them the section of the N400 application that these interview questions are related to and helps them figure out how they're going to fill out the form. So in the book, students see examples of ways that the interview questions might be worded, and they learn what the questions mean, and they can practice their own answers. It includes those tricky advanced level vocabulary words that are quite challenging for students because they're not things that we typically would teach in a beginner ESL class or even an advanced one. It shows students how to complete the application and how to answer interview questions based on the form. So the book uses fictional characters to demonstrate various scenarios as it goes through each section of the application. For example, these 2 pages show questions about names. Each page features a character, and that character's personal background information is at the top of the page. So the character is Hi, and he gives a little information about his name. And below that, where it says Hi's form, you can see how that information would be entered into his particular application form. And then students take a quiz. They indicate how Hi should answer a question about his name at the interview. After that, the students read and listen along to a dialogue from Hi's citizenship interview, and they learn how he actually did answer the question. The next page offers various ways that an examiner might phrase questions about the student's name. And finally, students fill out a reproduction of the corresponding section of the citizenship application to fill out on their own. The personal background interview is a listening and speaking challenge. It's not a written test. So students need to hear the key vocabulary and examples of questions that they're likely to hear in an interview. And if students struggle with reading and writing, it doesn't really matter that much. They might not be able to read every word that they see in this textbook. What matters is that they recognize the words when they hear them. So teachers should be ready to read the sample questions and dialogue aloud in class or play the audio. And the audio tracks are available on the New Readers Press website. Free. So the personal background interview includes a lot of questions to determine whether the student has demonstrated what immigration calls good moral character. And these questions are well above the level that USCIS regulations specify for the test. They include vocabulary that's not taught in ESL classes, and they bring in topics that are pretty uncomfortable to discuss in an adult education class. But examiners do ask these questions at the interview, and teachers have to deal with this unpleasant content somehow. So I decided to tackle this problem by creating fictional stories about people who exhibit the moral character issues. And this way the focus is on the fictional character instead of the students in the citizenship class. There's a teacher's guide for all 3 books, and it gives an overall explanation of the naturalization process and how the test is administered and how it is scored. And for each of the 3 books, it explains how to use the features and how to lead activities. So here's a sample page, and it's particularly useful for the civics book because the civics content can be really abstract. Government and even history can be pretty hard to explain sometimes to low-level students. So teachers need to know how to introduce the content in a way that makes it less abstract, more concrete, and how to demystify vocabulary words like constitution or branches of government, separation of powers. The teacher's guide also suggests games and activities to provide additional reinforcement and to expand on the content that's taught in the lessons. And it even offers songs that teachers can use to reinforce the content and just make the class more fun. The section of the teacher's guide that goes with the interview book is also really helpful because it explains why examiners ask each question. It tells how to coach students in their responses, and it flags the kind of responses that might be a problem for a student's application. It tells how to coach the student to use communication strategies like asking for clarification or asking for time to think of an answer. And it also, it tells how to offer authentic practice interviews. Basically, it covers everything that you need to know about interview preparation. So that's my overview of the textbook series, but while I'm here, I'm guessing that you would like to know about this new test that immigration is talking about. So I'm going to give you an overview of that. There are revisions in the works right now for 2 parts of the test, the English speaking test and the civics test. The new test items are currently being developed by in-house subject matter experts. That's what immigration says. And they're going to be reviewed by a committee of outside experts. And then they plan to try out the new test items and see how well they perform with various types of students in adult education programs around the country. The new test is expected to be operational by the end of 2024. If you're interested in being part of that trial testing, there's information on how to participate on the USCIS website. It's going to start soon, so if you want to do that, you need to get on the ball. And it'll be happening over the summer. And I know here in Massachusetts, there are not very many programs that are operating in the summer, but if your program is, you can be part of that trial testing. As I mentioned, the speaking test is going to change. So immigration plans to stop using responses to the personal background questions on the N400 application in order to assess oral proficiency. I don't really know how they're going to conduct those interviews and if a translator will be allowed to come in with the student now. But we do know that the new test will be pegged at the high beginning NRS level. So teachers who are familiar with the Best Plus test are going to recognize this format. The applicant will be shown a color photo of an ordinary event, and this is a sample that they gave us, but it's not a real item. It's related to an everyday life topic such as weather, food, or daily activities. and the applicants will hear, "Tell me about this picture." So they'll pass the test if they respond with relevant content vocabulary using simple words and phrases. They'll have 3 chances to answer with 3 different photos, and we're told that grammatical accuracy will not be a scoring consideration. I just got confirmation that humans will be scoring this test and not artificial intelligence, so that's good news. The civics test is also under revision. Based on the information that we're receiving, the content is likely to keep many of the same topics that we're teaching now that are in the 100 questions, but they're developing new test questions too. And it's likely there'll be some shifting of the content to bring it up to date. And I'm guessing maybe to include history related to underrepresented groups. The number of study questions is going to remain at 100, and we're told that applicants will be expected to answer 6 out of 10 questions correctly, just like the current test. But it will be administered on a computer or a tablet, and it will be in multiple choice format. So there'll be 1 question and 4 answer options. There's no trick questions. There's nothing like all of the above or none of the above or only A and B. There'll be 1 easily identifiable correct answer and 3 incorrect answers. And those incorrect answers, that they're called distractors, they're going to come from other words in the questions and answers that students study, so that the students won't be confronted with words that they've never seen before. We're told that this is going to be a written multiple choice test, period, that there's no audio offered to the students. And I'm pushing back on that one. I find that unacceptable. I would say that 90% of the students who take the citizenship test are fine with a multiple choice test, and they're going to be fine with reading those questions and answers. But the students that I work with, mostly older students, students who have very limited formal education, they're not going to be able to pass a written multiple choice test. So I'm hoping to change their minds and try to get them to include audio. If not, then my other hope is that maybe they will offer these students with low levels of formal education or reading proficiency, that they would give them the chance to take the test the old way, where an examiner just reads a question and the student produces the answer verbally. I don't know if they're going to go along with my suggestions, but I'm going to keep on pushing that. This slide is just about what a multiple choice question looks like to my beginning level students. They really can't make heads or tails of it, and they're not familiar with the multiple choice format. So in addition to raising their reading proficiency, I will have to work with them on how multiple choice questions work. And so we'll be doing a lot more test prep. And one of my objections to this is that we already have a reading test, and it's pegged to the high beginning NRS level. And I've never heard a complaint about it. It's working fine. And now, if it's only going to be a written civics test, that means we actually have a second reading test that is 2 levels higher than the current reading test. So in other words, they'll be taking 2 reading tests, the regular reading test that they do now, which is just a matter of reading 1 question, and a second reading test, which involves the civics and is much more difficult. So I'm having a problem with this. Now, for those of you who are wondering, I will be updating the textbook series once the new test is operational. And that won't be until late in 2024. So there's no need to change anything about the way that you teach citizenship now. You can use the same materials for quite a bit longer. And even when the new test gets rolled out, I expect that there'll be a 6-month period where the applicants can choose whether to take the old version of the test or the new one. So there'll be plenty of time to retool our citizenship classrooms when the new test becomes operational. So don't worry, I've got you covered. If you want to get updates on the new test, I suggest that you subscribe to my blog, Citizenship News. When I learn about anything that's of interest to citizenship educators, I post it right away. And if you subscribe, you'll get an email each time I post. You can also get information from the USCIS website. They post official information, as soon as they are willing to release it. So Elaine, did you want to get on and talk about the special offer?
Yes, hey, yes, happy to. All right, well, that's a lot fast, and then we can take some questions, and if anybody wants to dive a little deeper in some thoughts, we can do that too. But first of all, Lynn, thank you for doing this today. It is very helpful, and sharing all the updates. I'm sure we were all wanting to know about that. But the special offer for today's session is an opportunity to save 10% on the Citizenship Passing the Test series. The promotion is good through mid-June, June 15th, and the promo code is MACAEP 23. And I think Patrick is going to have this in the slides or in the handout section. Is that correct, Dawn? Okay, wonderful. And so yes, and then so you can save on these books that Lynn is mentioning today. But I did also want to mention too that on our website, I know that Lynn referenced it, but if you do go to our website and you and click on the books, down at the very far page on the website, we have lots and lots of free information, free resources, videos. Sometimes there's correlations, and there's, I think, additional activities. So take advantage of all the free that you can. And then also too, if you go to our pro literacy website, and I should have had this for Patrick, but you just go to proliteracyednet.org/citizenship, and we have a whole bunch of other information on there for you as well. And I thank you. It looks like, Lynn, you might be getting some questions.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and ask me anything.
This is a great time to dive deeper.
Yeah, we do have a question in the chat, but I think if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, Niam, and then you can go ahead and ask directly, that would be fine.
Hello. Thank you so much for the presentation. I do teach citizenship, and this information is really wonderful. Will there be multiple choice testing strategies in those books or on the website or blog, anywhere?
Once the new test is rolled out, the book will feature multiple choice practice. And I believe that immigration is also planning to offer practice items so the students can see what multiple choice looks like.
Are there any other questions for Lynn? Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. Go ahead.
Okay, I was told that passing the citizenship test is not counted as one of the achievements of or the statistics from the state. Do you think they can reconsider? Because in 1 year, I really had more than 10 students that passed the test, and we started from filling out the form to practicing for the, from the whole thing.
Well, congratulations on getting 10 students in 1 year. That's awesome. I
It
can't
was
answer
good.
that question for your state, but maybe somebody else here can.
I'm from Michigan.
Does anybody know about what you can count and what you can't?
I wasn't sure of the questions. Could you repeat that?
So does it have any value passing the test for our school? Still not-
She's talking about outcomes for your, for your state adult
Yeah.
education
Oh,
grant.
okay. That would probably be Patrick might know that. I don't know. Louis might even know that. Do you know, Louis?
Can you unmute?
Oh, we can't hear him. It's a good question.
Yeah, my stupid speaker on my computer's not working very well. I don't think it counts as a level gain. That is something, again, the MACAE organization would probably have to go and lobby through the state to get. But right now, I don't believe it does count as the level gain.
Good. Thank you, Louis. Appreciate that. Thanks for jumping in. Florita, I'll tell you what, I'll reach out to Patrick and see if we can look into that a little bit more. Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Okay, last chance.
Any other questions before we give you back some of your time?
You know, I do know there's a lot of folks on the call that are using the series. So if you're having some success or even just some teaching strategies that you might want to share with the group, I think this would be a wonderful time. And then Lynn could maybe share maybe how she is using it too at her program. Do you see that, Lynn, in the chat?
Will the books cover the updated format and questions, topics of the citizenship test? You bet. I'm on it. It's just that we don't know what the official questions and answers are going to be. And until they release them, I can't produce the materials, but I'll get them to you as fast as I can as soon as they get released.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to say I'm very interested in it, but I'm wondering if you're going to redesign and have a new test format, if I should hold off and maybe get the updated editions that'll be happening.
Yeah, well, nothing's going to happen until the end of 2024. And sometimes these things take even longer than they say they're going to, but that's what I'm anticipating.
Okay, still very interested. So thank you for the information.
Mhm.
Did we answer everyone's questions today? Is there any thoughts you have moving forward? Any suggestions or anything? Well, it's not quite Friday yet, but we are going to give you part of your day back, it looks like.
Well, on behalf of all of us, thank you so much, Lynn, for your time and for sharing all the information with us. All of the recording and also the associated materials, including the offer of a discount for MACAE, will be available. Patrick and I will compile all of those things and get that sent out to everyone. And we just appreciate your time and your insights for all of us. So thank you. Is there any other last minute questions before we sign off?
I wanted to thank everyone for joining this morning, and I wanted to thank Lynn for taking the time. Thank you. I know you're busy, and I appreciate taking the time to share the updates with us this morning.
You're welcome.
And it's so nice to see everyone. And
All
nice
right,
To be with
well,
you.
you have a few minutes before our next session. Our next session starts at 10:15. So I will probably see some of you at the 10:15 session. So enjoy your 20 minutes free time here.
Yes, new coffee.
That's right. The bathroom and coffee.
Take care, everyone. Have a lovely day. Thank you. Thanks, Lynn. Thanks, Don. Bye-bye.
Yes. And Lynn, if you could stay on a minute, Elaine, that would be great.
I will. Thanks, Lynn, again. So good to see you.
Good to see you too, an actual face to
I know.
associate with the name.
Yes, yes. Well, we met briefly at Pro Literacy, San Antonio, and that's where I got your info. I thought this was helpful.
Yeah, I can't really tell how many people are actually listening. And
It looks like you had a lot. You had over 22, and a lot of people thanking you for your time and really love the information.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
That's good.
we had about 20 participants, so that is great. It's a really good turnout. So, and I think that just kind of having the visual was really helpful for people to see what the materials include. So I'm hopeful that people will reach out and take advantage of the materials that you guys are offering to them. So,
I meant to
Yeah.
tell them to get a sample and I forgot to say that, but
Yeah.
I have my notes written out and then I get talking and forget to look at my
I
notes.
know it's hard and it's the first session of the morning.
I know.
So, so we're all still waking up, but
Yeah, so I'm like,
But
"Oh."
yes, so thank you so much. And if there's anything else that you want added to the notes of the meeting, you can send them to Patrick or myself and we'll get them included when we send everything out to the participants. So,
Okay, so everything I sent Patrick will be included and then
yes.
will we
Yep.
will we receive the link too or?
You should, we should send, we plan to send everything to all the presenters.
Okay.
Yep, so everybody has it for sure. And all of it will be on our website too, so, you can always access it there, so.
Okay. Well,
Don't
listen,
you know you're still recording?
I
Oh.
know, I don't know when I'm supposed to stop,
wait.
I don't know.
well,
This
maybe
is my first time, so,
I thought you did good. It's nice to meet you too, Dawn.
yes, it's nice to meet you, so. Well, good, well, I
You need me
guess
to
it.